Jake.
Okay, so it's starting to connect. So you guys have about 10 seconds before it actually begins streaming.
Okay. I don't know who said that, but I appreciate it. Ready?
Yep, we're streaming now.
All right, got it. Okay, I'd like to call to order the May 5th, 2020 meeting of the Irmo Town Council. I want to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll do that Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dear Lord, bless this council and the decisions we make tonight and help us through these technical challenges as the Zoom meeting proceeds. Amen. The reading of the minutes from April 21st, 2020. Is there a motion for reading, first reading of the minutes?
So moved. Oh.
Mr. Sickinger made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Bush seconded. Are there any changes to the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor of the minutes as written? I'll read the roll off. Mr. Bush.
I don't have any amendments.
You're voting.
Oh, yay.
Okay. Ms. Condo.
Yay.
Turn your mute back on. Mr. Sickinger.
Yay.
Mr. Danielson. Yeah. Okay, and I vote yay, it's unanimous. Report of standing, administrative briefing. Mr. Brown, are there any changes to the administrative?
There's just one thing I wanted to bring to everybody's attention. I sent out a notice earlier in the week about the town parks. The only response I got back was, how about opening up the town park and leaving the community park and the Veterans Park closed? I just would like to know how council feels about that.
We'll take that under consideration of communications, okay? Are there any changes from the council for Mr. Brown? None?
Are we doing the administrative briefing or are we moved to amendments?
Administrative briefing.
Okay.
Okay. Amendments to the agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
I'd like to make a motion.
You'd like to amend the agenda? Go ahead.
I would like to discuss moving the presentation by citizens to the beginning of our meeting prior to agenda items, so that if somebody wishes to speak on an agenda item, they can. But I'm going to need a second if we want to discuss it.
A second.
Well, we can't do that. It's out of order. The amendments to the agenda are for emergency items only. We can't make an amendment to the agenda to move the discussion from where it is to before, but we can certainly take that up at the next council agenda. That's a ruling from the chair.
So I think
the chair has ruled that that's out of order. You can't amend the agenda to move that. It's not an emergency item, okay?
But we could do it for the next meeting?
Right.
Okay.
I believe what he's asking, for is to have a permanent modification to the agenda to where presentation from citizens in the future will come first. Not live, but
right.
I believe that's what the motion is.
We can do that. We can do that on the next
agenda.
agenda.
Have that discussion. I don't think it should be amended tonight, but I think that he could have a place on the agenda for discussion.
Danielson, Me too, thank you. Jake, what did you say? You gotta take your mute off, Jake. I have an amendment to the agenda. Has anybody else? I have an amendment to the agenda. We need to add an item D under new business. And that's to extend the Emergency Powers Act until June 17th, 2020. Since I don't think the coronavirus will be over by the 17th. Is there a second to that?
So I get to enjoy this.
You got to take off the mute, Kathy, if you're going to talk.
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved and second. All in favor, I'll read the roll. Mr. Bush.
Nay.
Okay. Ms. Condon.
Yay.
Mr. Danielson.
Okay.
Mr. Sickinger.
Point of order. This is just to put this on the agenda, correct?
Correct, on the item D.
Yay.
Okay, and I vote yay. We have.
Mr. Mayor, can I speak for a minute? I think Mr. Bush's proposal was simply to put on the agenda to discuss the future movement of presentation by citizens, not to change it tonight. And I believe you could amend the agenda to say that
Right, we
with a
are
vote
gonna,
of council.
okay, we already are gonna add that to the future agenda. I mean, what is it that need to be discussed?
Okay, I'm sorry. Excuse me for interrupting.
Okay. All right, back to the extended, adding new business item D. Extended Emergency Powers Act until June 17th. That's a approval.
Barry, is it C or D?
It's C.
Well, I'm looking at the agenda and it says A and C. I don't know why. Is it gonna be C or D?
Gotta know what it is.
Okay, so that'll be C then. I apologize. So on the new business item C, the approval to extend the Emergency Powers Act until June 17th. Okay, ready to move on? As a consideration of communication.
I
Are there
have,
any consideration of communication?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Sickinger.
I have a note from Mr. Loveland, just asking for a update to with SC dot and the road open, attempts to get the road open to Lake Murray.
He has an update or he's asking?
He was wondering if the town had an update to that, which of course I'll pass over to Bob if he has an update on that.
I thought,
Yeah.
okay. You
There's
have an
no
update on?
Okay. That's it for me.
And- All right, Eric, I thought Loveland had that all worked out with the SCDOT. Am I confused about that?
The concept was worked out with them. The details was
Okay.
not. And how it
Okay.
would work with handover to the town and the cost of it, but he teed
Okay,
it
so
up.
we still got to do that. Okay.
Yep.
Got it. Thank you. All right. Ms. Condo.
Thank you. Bob, isn't that what we put on the Lexington County thing? To get paid
No, ma'am, we put Mosley Street down. That's the road
Okay.
that goes the back way, the dirt road.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Are there any other consideration communications? I thought we had something else.
Yes, Barry. Mr.
Okay,
Mayor,
go ahead.
I'd like to bring up this house issue. I'm getting texts and phone calls over in Old Friars Gate on this Trailers Gate house that has been, we had this discussion that it's technically not abandoned because the taxes are paid, but it is vacant, has been vacant. It's got junk trucks in the front. And I've been informed, being the newbie, that we don't have a law against this. And we can't even check the registration on the truck because it's backed in. Clearly, it can't run. It's not registered. It's just a mess. We've got to do something. The backyard is a haven. It's a health hazard. Snakes. I went back there. It's up to my waist. It's just, I'm worried about it becoming a crack house. It's in a great neighborhood. A lot of the neighbors are senior citizens. They're all concerned and have been over this house. So I don't know what we can do, but we need to do something.
Have we
May I
sent
help
code
you?
enforcement out there?
May I help you?
Yes, we did. And I'll let Bob explain that because I'm not a fan of the explanation.
We have an ordinance that allows us to go in and to clean it up and to place a lien against the property for the cost of cleaning it up. If the grass is unusually high, if there's dirt, if there's trash, we have the legal right under our ordinance through our code enforcement to go in, cut the grass, and to actually simply file a lien. Now that would entail me or Bob or both of us trying to get the property description and to file the lien. But code enforcement can see to it that the thing is actually cleaned up through the town. We also have a nuisance ordinance, or at least we used to, unless Hardy repealed it, which basically says that through code enforcement, the place can be declared to be a nuisance, and the owner of the property can actually be brought into the town court and charged with a violation. And if they don't clean it up, they can be charged again and again and again. And actually, if they continue to ignore it, they can actually be incarcerated before the town court. Normally what we do, or have done before I was asked not to be here last time, is that we would turn it over to code enforcement. We would have to locate the owners. The ordinance also provides that if the owner can't be located and the property is in foreclosure, that we can actually communicate with the finance company, which has the mortgage, and can basically lean upon them to do something. And of course, when the house is foreclosed, it would require the foreclosure attorneys to basically satisfy our liens. So my recommendation would be that you ask the chief of police to have code enforcement go out, look at it, determine it to be a nuisance, to basically go through the actual, I wrote the nuisance ordinance, but it's been a long time. Basically go through the steps necessary and then immediately get somebody out there to cut the grass and clean the place up. And once that's done, we go through the steps of notifying them to clean it up. If they don't do it, then we basically have the citations issued, bring it in town court, and we will prosecute them in our town court for the violation. There is no reason in the world for us to sit back and let that thing sit there. And I know our code enforcement officer is terrific. He's lights my phone up on a regular basis. And I am more than happy to work with him, and my office is more than happy to work with him to get it cleaned up. But we don't have to just sit back and take it.
Again, probably my first official from once I was sworn in was to file this complaint on behalf of the citizens. And I got basically a nolo contendere. I mean, I just got kicked to the curb
Well, we try to spread it out as long as we can, trying to get the owner, because, you know, anything that we do, we're paying up front. Like, we might never see the money back in town for 10, 20, 30 years.
Well, let's cut the grass anyway, Bob.
So
Let's get the grass cut.
I mean, we have a bunch, we spent $11,000 last year on leads. It's just money gone, but it's helping to clean up some areas. I got it, but that's really what we can do.
Okay, well, let's try to figure out what we can do using code enforcement. And Bill, I will work with you and follow up on that, because we need to do something like you said. I don't know, I'll get with you and get the address and everything, but
It's just surrounded by beautiful homes and beautiful landscape.
Where is it?
yeah.
Right up in the cul-de-sac.
Old Friendscape.
Okay, we'll
Cut
take a
grass.
look at it. We'll take a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other consideration of communications? Are there any other consideration of communications? Hearing none, we're gonna move on to unfinished business. Second reading of ordinance 2009 to adopt the operating capital budget for fiscal year 2021. Is there a motion for second reading approval?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay,
I'll
Ms.
second.
Mr. Sickinger, Mr. Sickinger made a motion, Ms. Condon second. Is there discussion? Mr. Sickinger,
No, sir.
Ms. Condon,
We need to pass it.
Mr. Bush,
I think we did our fiscal duty and we went through the budget, so I think it needs to be passed.
Mr. Danielson,
No comment.
okay? I'll call the roll. Mr. Sickinger.
Aye.
Yay or nay?
Yay.
Aye, okay. Ms. Condon,
Yay.
Mr. Bush,
Yay or aye?
Mr. Danielson,
Aye.
and I vote aye, unanimous. New business, approval to submit and establish the Irmo Future Growth Organization or Corporation, a 501c3 nonprofit sponsored by the town of Irmo. Is there a motion for?
I'll make a motion, Barry.
Mr. Danielson made the motion. Is there a second?
A second.
Mr. Sickinger seconded. Mr. Danielson, is there any discussion?
Yes, I think it's,
Turn your mic on.
okay, better.
Yeah,
I've got, it's a worthy cause. I think we've got a list of, we had 5, but I believe we have 7. So I don't know whether we originally had 7 in the paperwork and then it was reduced to 5. Could we make it 7 because we have 7 people who want it?
Mr. Moore, turn your microphone off, please.
You can make bylaws anything you want now.
Mr. Moore, mute your microphone. Thank you. Mr. Danielson, you saying you want to modify it from a 5-member board to 7?
I would
or-
think, and Mr. Sickinger can jump in here, but I've read his email about Beach Loveland being very interested in being on it. I thought of Beach Loveland, but didn't reach out because I thought we were staying with 5. But with the addition of the CPA that I brought to the table and the other good quality people, I don't see why we couldn't just bump it to 7.
Yeah,
instead of
just
the 5.
point of order. Sorry, Mr. Danielson. That's for B, right? So we can amend that when we bring it up. We're on A still.
We're on A still.
Just as a note.
Okay.
So Bill,
That's where I stand.
okay, Mrs.
It's going to be a lot of work,
Mrs. Sicken-
get the banks involved, all of those things. So
Yeah, I agree with what Mr. Danielson has to say. And I will discuss more the board of director members in the next section, but I am in favor of establishing a nonprofit sponsored by the town, which
Okay.
is the specific language here.
Right. That's all we're doing on A. Mr. Bush, turn your mic on, please. Thank you.
I am also in favor. I think in the times that we're in, that this was needed even before we had a pandemic. But you know, I think reviving it now is going to be important and a path forward for the town and for the small businesses, and the collective of folks that are listed are the leaders in our community. I think this is going to be a good thing all the way around. So I support it.
Okay, Mrs. Condon, turn your mic on, please.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I have no objection. I think it's probably a good idea.
Okay. Me. I agree with this idea of creating the Irmo Future Growth Organization, or 501c3. And I also agree that it should have on the board of directors at least 2 members of the Irmo Town Council. In fact, I wanted to modify the bylaws to reflect that at all times there must be at least 2 members of the Irmo, active members of the council on the board of directors. And it doesn't say that now, but that's what I'd like to make that modification to the bylaws. And so that's a motion to modify the bylaws to represent that, say
Mr.
that.
Mayor,
Yeah,
isn't that something that the board would cover during their first meeting?
no, we're establishing the bylaws we're establishing the group. What I'm
Right.
saying is I'm making sure that there's at least 2 members of the Irmo Council on that board of directors. I can't hear what you're saying, Bob, but do you understand the modification I'm making? I'm asking for.
Yeah.
It's in the bylaws. It's
Right.
in the
Fine with
bylaws.
Yeah.
So I made a motion for that change to the bylaws. Is it in there, Bob? Bob, is it in there, or we have to add that?
I'm still here. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, again, the bylaws, like Eric said, will be approved by the board. All we're trying to do is help them get their feet on the ground. So having
Right.
We'll call it a draft bylaws in place when the board of directors first meets, they have to approve it. It's their bylaws, not ours.
Right.
So,
But in
and
their
the
draft
language you
bylaws.
put in there is you just want to make
Correct.
sure that they have the ability to have 2 council members on it. No, that
Correct.
should not be a problem.
Correct. Is everybody okay with that? Can we vote on that? All in favor of making it?
Do we have to make a motion on that first? Like I motion and then somebody seconds
I
that?
just did. I made a motion.
Second.
A second.
Okay.
A
All right.
third.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Is any more discussion about that motion? Seeing none, all in favor, I'll call a roll of adding that motion that there will always be at least 2 members of the Irmo Council on the board of directors and their bylaws. Mr. Bush,
Yay.
Mr. Sickinger,
Yay.
Ms. Condon,
Yes.
Mr. Danielson.
Yeah.
Mr. Danielson, I didn't hear you, sir. Mr. Danielson.
Yay.
Okay, and I vote yay, that's unanimous. So we made that modification. Now we're voting on approval to submit an application to establish the Irmo Growth Organization. Is there any more comments, any more discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I would assume you would want somebody from the new organization to get with me for me to file the nonprofit charter.
I do.
Just wanted to make sure that I had to make sure I have the authority to basically do that. But I think I heard y'all say that you wanted to establish it, and I think that the idea is you want me to do it, which I will be happy to do.
Yes, sir.
I'll do it. All right,
That's,
thank you.
that's implied, I think.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right. All in favor of the approval to submit the application and establish the group? Mr. Bush,
Yay.
Mr. Sickinger,
Yes.
Ms. Condon,
Yes.
Mr. Danielson. And I vote yes. Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Moore, please establish that as instructed. Appointment of the 5-member board of members to this new proposed 501c3, the Irmo Future Growth Organization. Is there a motion?
So
I'll
moved.
make a motion.
Okay, Mr. Danielson made the motion, Mr.
I second.
Sickinger, second. Mr. Danielson, any discussion?
Yes, I'll go back to my recommendation that we modify this to a 7-member panel, which would be 5 selected individuals from the community, either residents of the town or businesses located in the town as qualifiers, and 2, obviously, council members on it at all times.
I second.
Well, Mr. Sickinger already seconded.
No, I think
No,
she
I'm
was.
making a motion.
Yeah, he
Oh,
is.
okay, I'm sorry, I didn't understand
That's
that
okay.
being a motion.
I think
Yeah,
Mr.
I'm making a
Danielson was
motion.
moving to amend.
Okay, got it. Sorry about that. All right. Is there discussion on the amendment? Anybody discuss the amendment?
Yeah, I think it's
Go ahead.
a great amendment. I think we've got a power stack team here of people who want to serve. And as expected, when the call goes out to our community to serve on a board that they're needed for, the right people are stepping up.
Right. I agree, and I'm very impressed that the list, matter of fact, I'll read the list. Ms. Condon. Ms. Condon, take your mute off. Is there any comment? Take your mute off.
I did.
You pushed it twice. Let's try it again. You pushed the wrong button.
Okay,
There you
I'm
go.
unmuted. Yes.
Your video's off now.
Oh,
Hold on. That's this one. All right.
no.
There
Okay,
you go.
I agree.
Thank you very much, Ms. Condon. Mr. Bush, put your mute back on, Ms. Condon. Mr. Bush?
I concur with everybody. I concur. Eric said we have a power stack team, and we do. I think they're going to be able to bring a lot to this recovery. So definitely in favor.
All right, thank you. And I'd like to just add that I'd like to read the names of the people that were actually asking to be the inaugural board. Right now we have Councilman Bill Danielson, Councilman Eric Sickinger, BB&T banker Misty Goldner, Attorney J. Gregory Studemeyer, Irmo Chamber President Kerry Powers, and CPA Ann Lang. And of course, Mr. Beach Loveland, the proprietor of Loveland Coffee. That's a very good, diverse group of business-minded people. They all have skin in the game, if you will. And I'm very impressed that we have that people that step forward to be a part of this inaugural board. Any more discussion? Seeing, oh, I'm sorry, Kathy, you want to say something?
just, yes, when I called Misty at BB&T, which
Yes.
will soon become Truist, she was thrilled, honored and thrilled. And usually we don't get that reaction when we call and ask somebody to serve on whatever commission it is. And she was, oh, I'd love it. I'm thrilled. I'm really honored. So that's a nice thing.
And I think what we're seeing here, and correct me if I'm wrong, council, is that we have a new dynamic in this town where when we have boards and commissions, we're actually getting more than one or two people asking to join these boards and commissions, especially when they're called out and advertised. So I think it's a great thing. I think we've changed the demeanor of the town, and I'm ready to vote. Mr. Bush, I'm sorry, Mr. Sickinger, you wanted to say something?
Just to clarify that we're voting on the amendment.
Correct. Mr. Sickinger, since I got you,
Yes.
yay. Mr. Bush,
It looks like we're going with yes instead of yay, so yes.
Mr. Danielson. Mr. Danielson,
Aye.
Ms. Condon,
Yes.
and I vote yes, so that's unanimous. Thank you. All right. Having that now to be a 7-member board, are we ready to vote, or is there any more discussion on the 7-member board? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? All in favor of appointment of the 7-member board, Mr. Bush?
I vote yay, but do we need to read the names again or just go ahead and vote?
I'll be glad to read the names again, Mr. Bush.
One more time.
Again, one more time, the names of the 7-member board, the 7-member inaugural board is Councilman Bill Danielson, Councilman Eric Sickinger, BB&T banker Misty Goldner, Attorney J. Gregory Studemeyer, Irmo Chamber President Kerry Powers, and CPA Ann Lang. Mr. Beach Loveland is also on that inaugural board. Is that right? Everybody got it? Okay. Mr.
Sounds
Bush.
good. Yes.
Ms. Condon,
Yes.
Mr. Danielson,
Yes.
and I vote yes. It's
I also
unanimous.
vote yes.
Yes.
I thought I called you already.
No.
Didn't I call you? I'm sorry. I apologize, sir. All right, item C, approval to extend the Emergency Powers Act until June 17th, 2020. Is there a motion for approval?
I so move.
Mr. Bush made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Bush, is there a discussion?
I agree.
Okay, since I don't think the coronavirus will be over by the 17th of May. Ms. Condon?
I don't think it will either. I do not like this format. It's easier for me to look at people when I talk to them than looking at a screen. But in the interest of health and safety, I think we ought to extend it. So I agree.
Okay. Mr. Danielson?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Mr. Sickinger?
What exactly does this accomplish? What does this do?
This is extending the emergency power that we're under right now, the Emergency Power Act. For instance, we've closed the town hall to public access. We closed the parks to public access. We modified our agenda to be a little more streamlined instead of the agenda we actually run under. And it gives the town ability to enact ordinances without having to do an emergency situation with only one reading as opposed to having 3 readings.
Okay, thank you. I'm generally in
Alright.
favor. Yeah,
Are you generally going to vote yes or no?
we'll find out in a second.
Okay. Mr. Bush,
I wonder if somebody could yield me just a few seconds. My understanding of the emergency
yield.
order.
Turn your mic off, Mr. Danielson.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure this.
Mr. Danielson,
Bill,
turn
your
your
mic's
mic off.
All right,
All right,
so
go
my
ahead.
understanding is that it will expire June 17th, but if things were to turn and things were to get a lot, go back to normal in the interim, correct?
Yeah. I mean,
Anytime we want. I think it's anytime. So
Yeah.
that's my understanding. Okay, so I just wanted clarification. Thank you.
I mean, I hope they come up with a cure before then, and then we can all go back to everything we normally do. But probably not likely. I don't know. Any more discussion? Seeing none. Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Mr. Stickinger,
Yay.
Ms. Condon,
Yes.
and Mr. Danielson.
Aye.
And I vote yes, and it's unanimous. Okay. This is a part of the meeting where we are allow citizens to call in on the agenda items. We ask you to dial the number that you see in front of y'all on the agenda. And we will take phone calls no more than 3 minutes apiece. Remember that we are going to respectfully ask you to limit your comments to things that are on the agenda. And do you have anybody yet? Okay. For the people that are home, you can dial the number 803-849-8503. Let's wait a few minutes.
You said it was just agenda, but this, they can, anything they want.
It's gonna ring or something, right?
Yes.
It's government, unless nobody's gonna call you.
Right on cue.
How do you,
Just hit the hands free.
hands free?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello,
That's all. That's all.
Mr. Brown, can you hear me?
Yes, George, we hear you.
Okay.
Let
Can
me turn
council
the
hear me?
volume, hold on a second. Let me turn the volume up. How do you turn the volume up? There you
Sounds like it's really up.
go. Okay. All right, Mr. Glassmeyer,
Yes, can you hear me, Mr. Mayor?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, I've got a number of concerns. The first one is, and I'll reiterate this from the last meeting, that I believe the presentation by citizen segment should be on the front end of the agenda before any action items rather than where it is now, or do both. I'd be fine with that. I think you either didn't listen carefully to Mr. Bush and Mr. Sickinger at this meeting when they suggested that we move this item to the front of this agenda for this meeting. You ruled that that was out of order, that you couldn't do that. I believe you could have done that by suspending the rules, which you've done countless times before in meetings, to take something out of order on the agenda, to suspend the rules. But apparently you didn't see fit to do that, and I'm mystified as to why. I certainly want to see this on the front end of future agendas to give citizens a chance to give you input before you vote. It's lunacy. The next item that I want to discuss is on April 27th, I received an email from Town Hall via listserv that council would hold an award ceremony the next day on April the 28th outside the municipal complex. That constitutes a meeting if council is there, and I suspect that's why Mr. Brown made the announcement. What I don't understand are a number of things. First of all, why was that so urgent that it had to be done then and couldn't be placed on the agenda for tonight, particularly in light of the fact that the recipient of that award couldn't be bothered to show up at the March meeting when it was on the agenda? The next concern I have is that why are the minutes for that meeting not on tonight's agenda for approval or disapproval by council? And the third concern I have about that is, as I read the executive order by the emergency order by the governor that was in place at that time, the home or work order that was in place and in force at that time, as I read it, this meeting violated a specific provisions of that order as to when council meetings could be held by municipalities, and it also facilitated, in my view, it facilitated the violation of another provision because it provided and encouraged a citizen to go somewhere other than home or work, i.e. this meeting. So I just don't understand all of that's on there. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glassmeyer. You just made it. Any other people, anybody else willing to call in? The line is open, 803-849-8503. You push this button right here to answer.
Yeah.
Hands-free. How do you hang up?
But I think we should say that we decided to put the presentation by citizens up here for the
Yeah,
next.
the next agenda.
Yeah. So that's a problem solved.
Any more? Anybody else? Any other citizens willing to call? All right. I rule that being closed. The citizen presentation by citizens is over. Moving back to discussion. We have no discussions on the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Sickinger.
it's not on the agenda, but that's typically how discussions go. I would like to discuss in an open forum, opening the parks. Since it's not an amendment, it's not something that needs to be done by a vote other than a majority of council. I still think it should be discussed in public. I had a number of people reach out to me and say, please open the parks.
Yeah, a number of people say to close the parks too, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. You want to suspend the rules and?
I submit it for discussion.
Well, we don't have it on the agenda right now for discussion. So, I mean, if you wanted to discuss that, we should have done that under consideration and communications.
Well, we can still discuss it. I brought it up under the administrative.
I can't hear.
I believe we can still discuss it because I mentioned it during the administrative briefing that I need some kind of direction from council on if they wanted to open any parks up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
Got it. All right. All right. I'll open up to you, Mr. Sickinger.
Yeah, I think we should open the parks with the exception of the playground equipment and wall it off, post a sign. You can't play in the playground equipment. If people decide to play in the let their kids in the playground equipment anyway, we've told them they can't, they aren't allowed to. We've walled it off. If they still throw their kids over the fence and let them play in the playground equipment, that's on them, not on us. People are going stir crazy. The weather's getting better. It's probably the safest thing that people can do is go to the park and sit in the grass and just walk around compared to going to a grocery store or going out to eat. No offense to those activities. People are looking for outlets for their energy, and that certainly would be one of them. We all love our parks, right?
Mm-hmm.
I yield.
Mr. Bush.
I agree for the most part. The one caveat would be, I don't think, as far as walling off park equipment would be difficult and unwieldy. So if we could just post a notice there that they're going to use the parks at their own risk, which they use it that way anyhow, that we could avoid orange plastic fences. And I think that would be unwieldy and difficult to manage. But otherwise, I agree. But I think we just need to be clear that it's at the park user's own risk.
I mean, we could post and put like yellow police tape or yellow caution tape up. I mean, that way at least there's some sort of barrier, even if it's not something to climb over.
Okay. Ms. Condon.
Mr. Sickinger, do you have any children?
No, ma'am, but I've got 2 neighbors with children that are, I'm like their uncle.
I understand. And that's fine, but I'm just making a point. Children are going to climb whatever and get on that playground. Mine would, my grandchildren would, and my children when they were little. To say that we're not liable is nice, but it doesn't work. We're always liable. If they climb that fence and hurt themselves or come down with COVID-19, I bet you we'll get sued and I bet you we'll have to pay. But I know what you're saying. I think the park next to Town Hall right there, I think it could be opened because there's no playground equipment. And I think it would be hard to get a group. I think it would work next door. Now, not the Veterans Park, because there's a lot of exercise stations and equipment, and that's a good way, you know, pass along germs. But I would only open that one park. But I understand what you're saying, and you're right. People do need an outlet. But I'm just sick of lawsuits. I'm sorry. Okay.
Mr. Danielson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In theory, I'm all for opening the parks. In reality, I agree with pretty much everybody who's spoken so far. They need an outlet, or citizens need an outlet. I have no problem with opening the town park next door. I think the community park has historically cost this community, cost this town way more money than it needs to have cost us. I agree that the children issue, I would lean towards, and I want to hear it tonight before I make my vote. I would lean towards our town attorney and so he can tell us exactly what we can post as for a no liability scenario, because I in turn agree with Councilperson Condon that we're going to have liability no matter what we post. So I would call upon a recommendation and or at least an opinion from Jake Moore.
Okay, and before we go there, Mr. Danielson, turn your mic off, please. Mr. Sickinger, I agree with you. People are stir crazy, they're ready to get out, but I got to agree with Ms. Condon also. We will be liable for anybody getting hurt in that park. For instance, that young boy who passed away had a tree fall on him. That wasn't our fault. It was an act of God, but we were held liable for it. And because it was in our park, there's no way that we can possibly sanitize all of that playground equipment on a regular basis, besides having somebody standing there with wipes and sanitizing equipment 24/7 to protect it. I understand that people want to use the park, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe that Saluda Shoals has opened their playground up, their parks up. And I guess not only the walking trails, but their playground equipment. I don't know how they're doing it or what if they're doing any kind of sanitation out there, but I'm just not prepared to do that. But Mr. Moore, can you tell us, is there a way that we can isolate ourselves from lawsuits if somebody should use our playground and come down or allege that we have gotten them sick from COVID-19 in our town park?
Excuse me. You know, the first thing I could say is this. I think that everyone here has expressed legitimate concerns about how we go from this point. We certainly have no crystal ball. We have an elected governor, and I don't see how we could have major problems if we follow the directives of our governor. The governor, as I understand it, has basically directed that parks and places such as parks should be opened. Now, we can't defy his ordinances, but we can be more restrictive. But you certainly have the directive from the governor to reopen these sorts of places, to my understanding. Even with his directive, we remain incredibly concerned about the health and safety of our citizens. I'm not so much concerned about the lawsuit as I am about the health and safety of the children and their parents. It does not appear this thing is going to abate anytime soon. To have that park as full of children as it appears there would be, opening the community park up to the use of that equipment appears to me to be dangerous. And I'm more concerned about the health of these kids than I am about being sued. And I think all of y'all have expressed that. I would rather advise that you be safe rather than sorry, and probably keep the community park open for a period of time. I don't see the same issues with the Veterans Park because all that is exercise equipment and it's not heavily used anyway. The passive park that we have, the Irmo Park, doesn't have the same magnetism for children that the other place has. I would recommend, if I were asked, I mean, I'm just a lawyer. I'm not going to set policy, but I believe a good compromise and a rational way to approach the protection of our citizens would be to reopen the town park and the Veterans Park, and to leave the community park closed for at least a period until we see what happens. And even though the governor has said we can open it, we don't have to. What concerns you is the playground equipment in the community park, and I agree. There's no way in the name of God you're going to keep those kids off that equipment if you open that park. I'm not even sure there's any way to keep them off the equipment if we don't open the park. They're going to climb over it anyway. But in regard to the legal exposure, once you've gotten the authority of the governor to basically do this, the fact that somebody might catch a cold or the flu or a virus by using the equipment, it would be incredibly hard to prove that they caught the virus in the town park or the community park. And it would also be, once it's been approved, all you're doing is doing what the governor has basically said you can do. So I can't imagine much legal exposure if somebody got sick and sued us for having gotten sick in the town park when they went in. I would be more concerned, though, and I think y'all are, with the actual safety of our children and our residents than getting sued. And I think that that we should err on the side of caution And I believe that to open the 2 parks and not all 3 would probably be your better course. From a legal standpoint, anybody can sue you for anything at any time. I guess if somebody went there and could prove they caught the virus there, we could be facing a lawsuit, but we do have insurance, and you can't spend your whole life running a town based upon being afraid of being sued. Again, I'm not as much concerned as your attorney with the legal liability as I am with the safety of young children. I love kids and I love that park. It is somewhat pleasurable to me to see the incredible demand that park brings. We were told when we went to build it that it would be a haven for drug dealers and nobody would use it. It is pleasurable to, I believe, Kathy and myself, to see it used as much as it is. But the fact that there is a high demand, I think another couple of weeks before we make a decision would be to err on the side of caution. So that's my recommendation, which is partially legal and partially policy, which is not my position, not what I'm supposed to be doing, but I did it anyway. So
I thank you for those comments, Mr. Moore. And again, I'd like to echo, and I want to clarify this. I am also I am very concerned about the health and welfare of our citizens and children. And again, I'm not saying that I'm worried about getting sued as much as I'm worried about a child using that equipment, not properly sanitizing it or catching something from that use of that equipment, and then coming down with COVID, or we become a hot spot in the Midlands because we are letting them kids run all over the playground equipment. We're not voting on anything here, but you have an idea. Mr. Bush, do you have any more comments, or are you shaking your head?
I think I'm done with comments. I mean,
Okay.
So I'm more of a person that would suggest that at this point with the governor opening parks that, I mean, if people engage in risky behavior of playing on playground equipment, they're probably doing that same risky behavior wherever they are normally.
Yeah.
So
All right.
as far as catching a virus, I lean more towards just opening the parks with a caveat that the parents have to parent, and leave it at that.
Well, we're not taking any votes here. We're just discussing this. Mr. Brown, you have an idea of how the council feels?
Yeah, it sounds to me like you would like me to open the town park and the Veterans Park, and we can do that. That's just removing some barricades. But just as a reference, I went over at 1 o'clock today up on Eastview Drive just to look over the gate. There were about 60 kids in there playing on the playground. So they are getting over there because it's not a closed park. I mean, vehicle can't get in there, but neighbors walk in there from all over the place.
Okay, so you're saying the kids are violating our closed signs and going in there playing on it anyway?
Yeah, we need to start writing tickets, Barry.
Yeah, how many
little kids?
How many tickets did you issue to those little kids?
We're not doing that. And kids will be kids.
Right. Well, the park is still closed and it will remain closed, I believe, but we'll take it from there. Thank you. Is there any other discussion items? Well, that's the only one we had. So I'd like to move on. We have an executive session item. If you will, we will go into executive session. Is there a motion to go into executive session? Is there a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Ms. Kondo made a motion. Is there a second? I'll second it. We will go into executive session and we'll come back and adjourn the meeting. If you would look on your, Mr. Kimiko, if you would put us into executive session, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, can we just come back in that room with you and you put your mask on so we can actually talk face to face? No, not at all. I mean, if you were
Such a pain.
Are we back in?
We are, yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
This is the meeting, so we are
We're
back
in the
in it.
meeting.
Barry's the only one that's not in the meeting.
Chemical Barry is saying that he can't get back into the meeting. Do you have to accept him back in? I thought it was just,
I don't see him. He's not in the waiting room. Tell him he needs to rejoin.
Just rejoin, Barry.
yeah, just rejoin, Barry.
We could make a motion to adjourn and just,
You know,
I'm in.
well, we have to say that we didn't do anything first, so.
oh, okay.
Yeah, no votes were taken, et cetera,
Yeah.
et cetera.
It's a terror.
See, we wouldn't be having this trouble if Eric came into this building. We could put him in the corner down there. Put some
Nobody
pants
puts baby
on,
in a
come to the
corner.
meeting.
All right, I'm back. We're back from executive session. Do we have a motion to come back from executive session?
So moved.
I second.
No votes were taken, and we discussing, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
I second.
Mr. Secretary, Mr. Bush. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Eric,
Eric made the motion, Mr. Bush second. Okay. Thank y'all.